Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first session tonight of PEO's 2017 Council All Candidates meetings. My name is John Glover, and I am past chair of East Toronto Chapter PEO. I will be the moderator for this session. Tonight, we will hear from candidates for Vice President. The three candidates for this position are Nancy Hill, Ray Lensman, and Shangas Satter. The electronic meetings with the candidates via webcast enable voters to learn more about the candidates and PEO issues, so more of them will vote. Voters were able to pose questions online in advance of the discussion and vote on those submitted by others. The questions of greatest interest to the most people will rise to the top of the list for discussion. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. In accordance with the approved protocol for the all candidates meetings, as moderator, I may shorten the questions and not read out preambles to questions, may select any question, not necessarily the highest rank, may remove offensive and duplicate questions, and may ask questions not on the platform. Each candidate will be provided 2 minutes for opening remarks. The moderator then will direct a question to a candidate. That question will have 1 minute to respond to the question. After the candidate has responded, the remaining two candidates will each have 1 minute to address the first candidate's response to the questions. Following the question period, the candidates will have 90 seconds each for closing remarks. The order of speakers was determined by a draw earlier this evening. So, without further delay, let's get started with opening remarks. The first candidate for Vice President is Nancy Hill.
Thank you, John. Good evening. Thank you for joining us online and giving us the opportunity to debate the issues. My name is Nancy Hill, and I am running for Vice President. I have volunteered with the profession for over 20 years. I have served on a variety of committees, and by way of example, I'll give you list some. Council, the Executive Committee, the Council Term Limits Task Force, the Complaints Committee, the Complaints and Discipline Task Force, and the Women in Engineering Advisory Committee. I have also volunteered with a number of other engineering stakeholders, such as OSPI, Engineers Canada, U of T, Ryerson, and as a warden for Camp 1 for the Iron Ring ceremony. On these committees, under my leadership, we have made significant changes. We changed the Engineering Act to include harassment as professional misconduct. In the Complaints Committee, we sped up processes of complaints and moved away from a first in, first out system. We now fast track those matters that can move through the system quickly and have significantly reduced the processing time for many complaints. On the Complaints and Discipline Task Force, we made significant recommendations for both the Complaints and Discipline Committees, which have made significant improvements in both these processes. I am currently working on the Council Term Limits Task Force, where we are providing recommendations to Council in regard to the very important issues of term limits and succession planning. If elected, my priorities are to strengthen the relevance of PEO, identify challenges to licensure for recent graduates and foreign-trained engineers, create leadership opportunities for young professionals and EITs, strengthen financial accountability related to the PEO operations, and support strategic outreach programs to the government and the community at large. I ask for your vote as Vice President.
Thank you, Nancy. The second candidate for Vice President is Ray Lensman. Ray?
Good evening, everyone. As you've heard, my name is Ray Lensman. I'm currently past chair and GLP chair for the Thousand Islands chapter that's based in Brockville. We're part of the Eastern region, along with 6 other chapters. The Engineering Dimensions article will highlight sort of my involvement with PEO and my platform and such. So what I thought I'd do tonight, though, is give you a little more information that's a little bit different. From my education point of view, I went to the University of Waterloo in their co-op plan. I continued on and got my Master's of Applied Science degree. It was actually in electrical engineering, but today you'd probably more call it the computer engineering field. From a work point of view, I worked in the telecommunications industry for 30 years. I started off in the R&D department, ended up in the manufacturing area, and had all kinds of different activity and software development. I was involved with simulation real-time studies for the first electronic automatic exchange telephone system, handled 1,000 lines of residential phones. Also got involved with other major software developments with the GTD5 EAX to compete with Northern Telecom at that time's the MS100. So there's been a variety of experience from the manufacturing and R&D end. My other volunteer work, I volunteered in minor sports organizations, as many engineers do, in both hockey and baseball. Did it 2 times around, once with my own kids and once with my grandson. Did one of the very fun jobs of ice scheduling, which is for the Brockville Minor Hockey Association, which was a pretty major undertaking, but utilized my software skills and such to, oh my goodness, the time flies by. Okay, from a PEO point of view, I've been involved with the chapter system for 32 years, been frustrated sometimes at trying to get things accomplished from that level, and I'm now trying to go into the VP position to have more of an influence. And I'm looking forward and hoping for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. The third candidate is Changiz Sadr. Changiz, your opening remarks.
Happy 2017 and good evening. Thank you for watching. My name is Changiz Sadr, and I am the Senior East Central Region Counselor, the Chair of Regional Counselors Committee, RCC, and an Executive Committee member. I strongly believe in self-governing and members-centric nature of PEO. I respect the members and their governing powers through the Act, regulations, and bylaws. I also believe that every single change to the PEO operations that impacts members as a whole needs the members' approval. As a tenured and experienced engineer, I understand the role younger generation of engineers will play in the future of PEO and aim to focus on the following key changes. Provide more opportunities for the qualified younger generation of engineers, especially female engineers who are currently underrepresented within PEO, to get involved in PEO governance. Make changes to the PE Act to create more flexibility in licensing matters and how we communicate with the public. Promote involvement of the chapters, as the chapters are the grassroots of PEO and PEO's interface and arms to reach out to the public and our members who are members of the public as well. Continue to create transparency around how we do things for our members as well as public. Uphold the strong enforcement and exclusivity of using the engineer title properly. Better obtain our profession and raise the value of engineering through public awareness and further create the trust that is associated with Professional Engineers Ontario. Together, we'll make a positive difference. Please visit my website at sadr.ca, sadr.ca, to learn more about my experience and goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Changiz. That concludes the opening remarks segment of this evening's telecast. Now let's get to our audience's question. As moderator, I will rotate the order of who speaks first for each question. We're going to start with question 1, and Nancy is the first responder. What do you see as the most important issue facing PEO today, and what would you do to address this issue?
I think that relevancy is the most important issue. I think that we see that we have issues with regard to our members, recent graduates, and the public. When looking at our members, less than 15% vote. When looking at recent grads, less than 40% get their licenses. And when looking at the government's looking is trending towards talking about qualified people rather than engineers when doing demand-side legislation. So in terms of our members, I think we have to do a better job with communication. In terms of the recent grads, I think we have to look at some of the emerging areas and show a clear path to licensure and show the value of licensure and make a case for that. And in terms of government, continue and improve on our government liaison program.
Thank you. Ray, your comments.
I think the most important issue is maintaining our self-regulation. We're going to be under a high magnifying glass with the Elliott Lake mall collapse and the Nipigon Bridge failure. Some of those things should never have happened. I think as far as what we need to do about it, we need to be much more proactive on some of these things, and there's different ways to interpret self-regulation. I think we have the legal capability of making Ontario regulations that have the force of law to put some of this in place. But we also have to get the support of the memberships. We have to address the member apathy aspect. I have several ideas on that. I've only got 15 seconds left, so I can't tell them all to you. But as VP, if I get elected to that position, I will be trying to pursue those things. And one of the major aspects is improving communications, but not just mass broadcasts of everything. It has to be more specialized into the members' needs.
Thank you, Ray. And Changas, your comments.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the low participation of members in the PEO election, as an example, or even PEO chapters and events, shows that PEO does not have the position amongst the public and members that it's supposed to or it should have. And the reason many members do not see any value and goes back to value of engineering in general. So what we can do, the PEO can promote the public awareness and raising the profile of engineering within the market, within the public, within the media. That's what we need to do. That's what we need to get more members involved. And within the involvement of members in PEO activity, we can have that self-regulation which Ray mentioned, to the point of confidence that we are really a self-regulating organization and all members are participating. Thank you.
Thank you. Our second question, we're going to start with Ray, is what do you see as the biggest threat to PEO as a self-governing body?
The biggest threat. Well, as I said, some of the public publicity related to the Elliott Lake Mall collapse and the Nipigon Bridge failure. We've seen what's happened in Quebec. They've lost their ability to self-regulate and the like. So it's going to be the public perception and the pressures that may come from that end. Thank you.
Changas.
Thank you. The biggest threat to the PEO self-regulation, as I mentioned earlier for the first question, that's the low participation of members, which really we are not representing the entire engineering community in Ontario, and that's a weakness. And the government may ask PEO, how are you doing as a self-regulator when only 10% of your members are involved? So this is, again, something that we need to raise the profile of engineering, and I insist on this one, and I have been doing this for almost entire my time of volunteering with PEO, which is over 16 years. And even I wrote an article back in 2010, which was published and featured as viewpoint on engineering dimension about importance of public awareness and raising the value of engineering in public. Thank you.
Nancy?
I think the biggest threat is around the issue of people not getting their license and people and legislation moving towards qualified person as opposed to engineer. And I think those two are related issues. When we look at a number of the disciplines and the emerging disciplines at the universities, a lot of those students end up in jobs that don't necessarily require a PEng. And they don't see the value of getting licensed. They don't see the value of coming under our umbrella and being regulated by us. And that's both from the student side and from the employer side. And I think that we need to address the issue of how we show our value to members, to the recent grads, and to employers and the government.
Thank you. The third question, we're going to start with Changas. What is your vision for PEO over the next 5 years?
Thank you. It's a very good question. Talking about self-regulation and getting members involved, probably in the next 5 years, we need to get to the point that we have more participation from members, not just in PEO activity. As Nancy mentioned, more participation in getting license. Now out of the 280,000 engineers in Ontario, we have only 84,000 the PENGs, and that shows the threat, that shows the issue here that we need to work on. And by promoting the value of engineering, by which we can start with the students, with the high schools, with universities, and promote engineering, the profile amongst the public and members. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy?
I think, as everybody said, it's improved in engagement of the members of new grads. I'd like to highlight some of the things that I think PEO is doing well, and I'd like to see them do more of, is some of the modules that they're doing, which makes it easier for people who are not in the GTA to engage with some of the learning opportunities that PEO has. I hope that they improve that and continue to develop these. I would like to see PEO improve its technology so that it makes it easier for people to remotely join in committees and in other activities at PEO. I would also like to see that we're working on a new strategic plan and that they've gone a long way to develop that, which highlights the issue of relevancy and engagement with our constituents and our members. Thank you.
Ray.
Yes. For my vision for the next 5 years, I would like to see, we've always had this issue of governance, and I would like to see us get more to, at least for the executive committee, a 4-year term of office. There's always been this thing that, you know, you get in there, you just get into the issues, and then the next thing your term's up and the like. So I think we have to take a major refocus on how we do this. You know, it's similar to the municipal governments. They're a 4-year term. And I think we should seriously look at compensating people at the that level to attract top-notch people to those positions. Thank you.
Nancy will be the first responder. What is the role and contribution of PEO chapters towards the achievement of PEO's mandate?
So I think a very important role for chapters is community engagement. So they are our boots on the ground in terms of engaging our members, but also on a local level, engaging with our MPs and spreading the word in terms of what PEO is doing. They're also our succession planning, our vehicle for succession planning. So they train our future leaders through giving them opportunities within the chapters. In addition, I think they could do, say, a little bit more, because they are the boots on the ground in terms of identifying when there's enforcement opportunities and, say, complaints where people should be identified in terms of complaints. They're vital in terms of reaching out and engaging across the province.
Thank you. Ray.
Thank you. The chapter system, as Nancy alluded to, is the farm system for council, where you get your training and knowledge of what's going on in PEO. You learn about the Professional Engineers Act, the regulations, bylaws, all the stuff you need to be able to function effectively at the council level. The chapter system was created a little over 50 years ago, and the primary aspect of this was to be the main communication medium between council and the members. We've kind of got around that now, and we've got all these email blasts going out where they're coming directly from head office to the members. We're not utilizing the chapter system well enough, in my mind. Rather than trying to go out and survey all the members, we could just survey the 36 chapters and get a pretty good feel of how we should be proceeding. And the chapters should be doing a better job of interfacing with their members on some of these issues. So from the, sorry, I just realized I'm up at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Changas.
Thank you. Talking chapters, I myself is a best example of how chapters can help in PEO operation and governance. I started my volunteer work with PEO with chapter Willowdale Thornhill, and I was on the board for 14 years, and I took on all roles and positions, including the chair. And that was the best training center for me to learn about PEO, about PEO's operation and governance. And that experience with the chapter qualified me to move up and run for regional councilor, which I did for past 4 years. And now I'm running for vice president. So chapters are the grassroots of PEO, our interface and arms of PEO to reach out to all members across Ontario throughout the 36 chapters that we have. Without chapters, PEO is just an organization in Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Ray will answer first. How effective are PEO's complaints and discipline processes in protecting the public interest?
I'm only generally aware of the complaints and discipline aspect. I have attended, Nancy put on a session one time explaining the complaints process and the committee work, and I also am aware of the aspect. Most of my knowledge on that aspect, though, is limited to what most members are, the aspect of the blue pages and dimensions and some of the bulletins that they're putting out. There is a summary report that gets produced to council. I've read some of those numbers. One of the observations is that some of these complaints seem to take a long time to resolve. So, but other than that, from what I'm aware, the general comments are that it does well for the complaints that are being handled.
Thank you. Angus?
Thank you. Being a member of discipline committee myself, I know that complaint and discipline processes of PEO are very effective. One issue that Ray mentioned about the timeline, I think that's because PEO is not doing a good job to explain to the members difficulties that PEO faces to establish the panels for discipline because of the limitations of the act and composition of the panels and volunteer base of the members and the two parties involved. Sometimes it takes lots of time to arrange one specific date that everyone is available. Other than that, we have a very effective process, and on engineering dimension, the blue pages are reflecting the result of the discipline and committee and complaint committee's work. Thank you.
Nancy?
So as someone who sat on the Complaints and Discipline Task Force and who was chair of the Complaints Committee, I have some intimate knowledge. While I think there's always room for improvement, I think we do a really good job in terms of these issues. Could we do better? Absolutely. Could I think perhaps an area for improvement would be how we communicate the process to the public. I also think that there was an issue with regards to the Woods case and our ability to discipline the former member. And I think that we are now looking at act changes to address this issue, which is a very concerning issue in terms of our ability to impact that person, but also in terms of how we are seen by the public and our ability to discipline former members. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Changiz will be the first responder. How will you manage the simultaneous time demands of your day job, your family, and your role on council?
Thank you. That's a very good question, and that's a question I get a lot because I am a member of many committees, and in my region for the 6 chapters in East Central, I attend almost all the events that I get the invitation for as a councillor. The reason is my day job, I am a consultant, and I'm very flexible in the time that I can arrange with my clients, and that has given me an opportunity to make myself available for my volunteer job and the commitment that I have for PEO. And not just PEO, I am volunteering with the community, the settlement agencies, and with other community engineering organizations and the couple of other not-for-profit organizations. And at the same time, I have a very good time for my family. And I have 3 kids. They are not kids anymore, and 4 grandkids. So I have enough time to spend with them, and I can say I have a very good time management. Thank you.
Nancy.
I would say I'm in a similar situation as Changi's. I have my own firm. I have a business partner who is understanding and flexible, and as somebody who works for themselves, I have the ability to time shift, I would say. So I have the ability to take a day off when needed. And work on the weekends when needed. As well, I have a partner who's very understanding in terms of time with PEO and understands that it's very important to me. He's absolutely supportive and comes out to the events where partners are welcomed. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ray.
There's several things that take up a lot of my time, but so far I've been able to juggle them. And if I get elected as VP, part of the way that I'll keep the balance is that my activities at the chapter level will be substantially reduced. That takes up quite a bit of my time with the regular meetings. As a VP, there's a conflict of interest. You can't be on the chapter executive, so that will automatically free it up. The other thing is I'm somewhat semi-retired. A lot of my time's been taken up, as many people know, with a major tax court appeal. I now have a hearing date of May 1st, so by the time things start rolling at the council level, hopefully that'll be history and a major load off my shoulders. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, for the next question, Nancy will be the first responder. Where do you see the relationship between PEO and OSPE, Ontario Society of Professional Engineers, going forward?
Thank you. So PEO is the regulator and OSPE is the advocacy body. And I see those as two sides of a coin in terms of the engineering profession. But I actually see the relationship more as a Venn diagram. And when you look at the areas that both organizations can function, there is an area of overlap. And I think that we could work collaboratively with OSPE in that area of overlap. And we have some examples of that. One is the Ontario Professional Engineers Awards, which we have worked very effectively with OSPE in terms of celebrating the leaders in our profession. And another recent area of overlap was with the GLP and the PAN doing a session, I think it was down at Hart House, in terms of training people to deal with the government. So I would look forward to working with OSPE if elected.
Right.
Looking forward, OSPE, when it was established, was to advocate for the members. It was not to advocate for the profession. There has been more of a shift to advocating for the profession, which I would support. The other problem with OSPE is limited funding. I think we need to bring PEO and OSPE more together. I even went so far as to suggest a few years ago, when OSPE was trying to have their own act, that we have revised the Professional Engineers Act to have the two organizations under the same act, and to make the membership mandatory to provide funds to advocate for the profession that we need. Thank you.
Angus.
Thank you. I'm a member of OSPE myself, and I have been a member of OSPE since its inception. And when I was the chapter chair, I worked very closely with OSPE. They had a committee at that time called Chapter Liaison, and we arranged the several events together. PEO and OSPE needs to work very closely together and can work together to raise the profile of engineering. PEO has the mandate of regulatory advocacy, and OSPE has the mandate of engineering advocacy for the members. But this is something that, although in some area are completely different, but as Nancy mentioned, there are many areas of overlap that PEO and OSPE can work together. And I really ask all members to become a member of OSPE, and a stronger voice on OSPE means a better engineering profession for all of us. Thank you.
For this next question, Ray will be the first responder. What are your thoughts on continuing professional development?
Interesting question. At the last AGM, I put forth a motion that we should be calling it mandatory continuing education. Those are the exact words that Justice Belanger used in his report. I think it's got to be very confusing to the members that we're coming back and we're talking about continuing professional development, CQA, CPA, CQA, CP squared, peak. I would think the average member's got to be totally confused to what we're talking about here. In the Professional Engineers Act, there is a section there that allows council, with the approval of the Lieutenant Governor, to create regulations that would allow us to make mandatory continuing education. And it's a lot easier to measure education as opposed to competency and such. So in general, I support it, that we need to do something on this end. You shouldn't just keep renewing your membership and being able to carry on. You should be maintaining your education and keeping up to date on the latest developments in your field. Thank you.
Thank you. Cengiz?
Thank you. As a regulatory organization, having CPD or continuing continuing professional development or education, as Ray mentioned, is something that when we look at all the engineering associations across Canada and many other regulatory organizations, they do have a mandatory CPD. So it is required. But what was PEO is different. I am a member of CP Squared Task Force myself. The PEAK program is not really about CPD. It's about collecting information and data from members, because PEO does not have data today available to show how members are practicing and what risks their practices pose to the public. So PIC is just about mandatory reporting, not mandatory CPD. This is something that PEO needs to do a better communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy?
Thank you. I think that the PEAK program is interesting because it seems to be a risk assessment, which I think is a good way to go. I think it recognizes that one size will not fit all, which I think has been sort of the issue that has been raised for years when we've had the discussion about continuing education or continuing professional development. I'm concerned that when you look at the Belanger report, which was issued in October 15, 2014, it said that we should have mandatory continuing education system, and it gave us 18 months to implement that. So we're out of time in terms of that issue, because the report was saying that we should have something in place by April 2016. So I think it's something that we need to move forward on. I recognize that the limitations that Cengiz has pointed up, but we need to do something, and we need to do it soon.
Thank you. The next question, Cengiz, will be the first responder. What weaknesses, if any, should PEO seek to improve?
I can say communication. That's a famous sentence for real estate people, but this is something we need to improve here. And probably one of the best channels of communications are chapters. PEO can do a better communication about what PEO is doing, what council is doing, and to share with the members and get their feedback and use their feedback to improve their operation and their governance. So communication is a major weakness for PEO. Not that we are not doing a communication, but we can do a better job of communication. Right now, we are using somewhat limited tools for communication, but we can improve and increase and use chapters. I repeat again, use chapters as a communication channel. Thank you.
And Nancy?
I agree that communication is one of the big issues. I think in terms of managing some of PEO's things, it would be, we need to improve our IT program within PEO here in head office so that we can reach out and engage with people more easily who are not in the GTA. I also think that we need to, on a different perspective, we need to be looking at, say, what are the non-traditional engineering, and looking at engaging those people in terms of licensure and involvement within PEO. I would say heavily on the civil engineering and mechanical engineering side and consulting engineering. And I think we need to be reaching out better to manufacturers, employers, and emerging technologies.
And Ray.
Well, I can say communications, and total support of Shanji's position. And along that line, I have attempted before to make specific suggestions. One of the things is to use the PEO webmail to improve communications, not only with council, but between chapters and committees. I got it set up for the Thousand Islands chapter. One of the first things you run into if you're trying to communicate with somebody, what's their email address? Well, there's a global address database that's available then that you can get all that information. You can also get information on the organizational structure from head office. One of the times I had to contact Gerard McDonald's new administrative assistant. All I knew was her name was Becky. I went on the global address thing, did a quick little type in of Becky, and up it popped with all the information. Gave me her title, phone number, all the contact information. So communications is one of the main areas, and there's specific ways that we can do them, and I'm hoping that I'll get the support as VP to help push them from the executive committee level. Thank you.
The same question from the opposite side. What are PEO's strengths as a regulator? And we'll start with Nancy.
I think PEO does an excellent job in terms of as a gatekeeper. I think that people that we license are absolutely qualified to be engineers. I also think we do a really good job as in the complaints and discipline process. So I think our core functions we do really well. I think, you know, when you consider that we do have 1,000 active volunteers, I think I think our real strength really is our volunteers, and we have a lot of programs for them, and we encourage them, and we give them leadership opportunities, and we are a very strong profession. Thank you.
Ray.
I think one of our main strengths is that we do have a good organizational structure. It could be better, but right now, you know, we've got the ability through the breaking of Ontario into 5 regions, having 36 chapters, and the basic communication capabilities to reach all the members. That's one of our main strengths. We do have a Professional Engineers Act that gives us the authority to self-regulate our profession. The Act gives us the ability to create many different regulations in this administration aspect. So from the basics, it's all there. We have a very good strengths in that regard. We got a lot of good people at head office. We've got a lot of good volunteers. We just have to get our act together a little bit better and communicate interactively more than we have been. Thank you.
And Changiz?
Thank you. I think the strength of PEO is the strategic plan that we have in place, which was introduced last year, and that's for 3 years until next year. And right now, the PEO, Gerald McDonald, has already started to work on the next 3-year term of strategic planning. This plan is very strong, based on taking many of the feedback we have received from different volunteers, different committees, and even at the chapter level for the chapter leader conference from the chapter delegates, and also the recommendations of Commissioner Belanger from Elliott Lake, some of them which are doable because not all of the recommendations are implementable. So this is strategic planning. It's something that we can improve. We can, as volunteer, we can work with the staff and work on that one and improve the governance and operations of the PEO in general in all aspects. Thank you.
This question, Ray will be the first responder. What is the role of Engineers Canada?
Engineers Canada is the coordinating organization for each of the provincial organizations. They do some of the accreditation coordination process for all the different universities in the various provinces. So they're currently the group that ties us all together for all the different provinces and territories in Canada. It's kind of interesting. Some of the latest developments, though, explore whether maybe we need a Professional Engineers Act of Canada, and will help get then through the federal level a consistent definition of the practice of professional engineering. It's generally pretty consistent there, but it would be a way to have it a little more portability of our licenses from province to province and the like. So, but it's there to be the coordinating aspect for all of the engineers in Canada, with each of the provincial associations being a member of Engineers Canada and supporting it financially.
Angus?
Thank you. The PEO and other provincial engineering organizations own Engineers Canada. We are parents, and Engineers Canada is our child. It's a federal the body based in Ottawa, and other than the two board for accreditation and qualification, which goes for the courses and syllabi and the programs for engineering programs for universities. They work, Engineers Canada works on some national mobility, anything that touches more than one province in engineering matters. So we work with Engineers Canada, and the PEO has the strongest voice comparing with other organizations, because we have 5 representatives at Engineers Canada. But as I mentioned, we are the parents, and we should direct Engineers Canada as what to do. And on national matters, we can put our voice there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nancy?
So as a regulator and self-regulator, our authority comes from Ontario. So Engineers Canada is an opportunity for us to work with the other provinces, but ultimately the buck stops here. I think that one of the strengths of engineering in Canada is the accreditation board and the qualification board. This is administered through Engineers Canada, and it provides really a level playing field across Canada for students in engineering. And I think this is one of a major strength of engineering within Canada. It also provides us with an opportunity of finding out best practices of what other organizations are doing and building on that. It also gives us a mechanism to create federal or national programs and to reach out to the federal government.
Thank you. Angus will be the first responder. As someone seeking a leadership position on council, what do you think makes you a good leader?
That's a very good question. Thank you. What makes me a good leader? That's my experience with PEO, specifically for over 16 years. As a volunteer for chapter, different positions, several different committees. I have been a member of ERC, Audit Committee, Finance Committee, Discipline Committee, and Emerging Discipline Task Force back in 2008 to 2011. And all other activities that I have with PEO, and chair of RCC at the regional consular level and the executive committee for past 2 years. This has given me a unique experience and knowledge beside my experience outside of the PEO with my own work, working with the C-level executives as a consultant, with other organizations that I have volunteered for and I am working with there. All of them together have given me a qualification that makes me a better candidate for this position. Thank you.
Nancy?
Thank you. So I think I'm a good leader because I'm a collaborative leader. I'm also a really good listener, and am good at understanding people's point of view. I think it's important at the leadership level to be a strategic thinker and have ideas in terms of how to move the profession forward. And I think I have all of those. I've received positive feedback from a number of committees and task force that I've sat on because they've asked me to step up and be chair of the audit committee, of the complaints committee, of the WEAC, and I've also been vice chair of a task force. I've also had board experience and chaired boards of, in other organizations. And last but not least, as a lawyer, I am well positioned to understand our Act and to advocate for changes in the Act, if necessary.
Thank you. And Ray?
Oh, that's an interesting question. There's different aspects. It's hard blowing your own horn. But from feedback in organizations that I've dealt with, I get the feeling that they think I'm a good leader. I try to consult with them and not just go off and take my own point of view when I'm trying to come to decisions. I try to be flexible. There's many times I've changed my position when somebody else has a better idea or I see a different perspective than I'd seen initially. Some of the things like even just I organize a 6-team recreational hockey league with the assistance of 11 other co-captains. And one of the difficult parts is the few times, fortunately, that we've had to have discipline hearings. And that's where I'm not acting on myself. I'm keeping them informed and in the loop of what's going on, do the research and hearing both sides. So it's just things like that. Also, when I was trying to, as chapter chair on a major issue, I made a point of going to extreme measures to contact all the membership so that I knew what their input was, not just speaking for myself. I'm there to represent them, and I hope that's one of the aspects that people would view me as being a good leader. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, Nancy, will be the lead responder. How do you deal with conflict?
So I think a key way to deal with conflict is by being a good listener, to understand everybody's point of view. I think sometimes the best way to do it is to take it offline, so that you try to table an issue to make sure that everybody's up to speed, so you can understand and get a chance to process everybody's perspective. And then I think you have to move forward and make a decision. Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, John, could you repeat the question?
How do you deal with conflict?
Generally trying to, if it's a conflict between two individuals, trying to talk to them both and get their point of views on what's going on and seeing if I can reach some kind of a compromise position in there. Definitely the one thing you got to do is address it. You can't just ignore it or it'll just escalate and get worse. Again, the biggest thing is listening and finding out all the facts related to the conflict. Some things can be really misinterpreted, and a lot of times the conflict is because of miscommunications. So trying to have an open ear to that, and particularly when there's two individuals involved, trying to see if we can reach some kind of a compromise situation. And typically the best thing is to bring the two individuals face to face so you can hear it. Usually you talk to them individually first and then collectively together afterwards. Thank you.
Changiz, how do you deal with conflict?
Thank you. As a cybersecurity professional, I have a very strong sense of ethic and conduct myself. And the best way to deal with conflict, of course, is to understand the conflict and find out if the conflict is because of a function, because of an action, because of a person, and then figure out how we can deal with that conflict based on just removing some point of function, removing the person that has conflict from the equation, or come up with a better solution, a different solution which can solve the conflict. So I have been involved with many the professional conflict cases in my day job within the security field. And I can confidently say that I have dealt with all of them successfully and resolved the issue in happiness of both parties. Thank you.
Okay. We'll start with Ray. How will you define success during your term on council?
Well, in my platform, I laid out some specific things that I would like to try and accomplish during my year. Some of them would be specific measures of that end. One of the things I'd like to try and do is change the chapter year. Currently, right now, we have the chapter year ends basically in the February timeframe. Many years ago, when I was chapter chair, the year ended in the same sort of time period with PEO council, so we were both more in sync. And so if I'm successful in that, that would be one of the measures of success. Another measure would be I'm trying to influence the use of webmail and that aspect to improve the communications. A measure of success is if I can go from 0 members of PEO council using webmail to at least half of them, then that's a big success. So that's...
Changiz, how will you define success?
Thank you. Where I am sitting right now, running for vice president position, is an indication of my success based on my volunteer work with PEO. When I started with PEO in 2000, I received my license in December '99, and I started with chapter right from early 2000. And where I am today, based on the member support that I get from the different chapters, from different organizations, PNGs across Ontario, even across Canada from the different organizations. And also my success from professional point of view. I have been in Canada for 24 years, and now I am at the point that I can work with very large organizations. They know me, and I don't have any advertisements. So professionally and voluntarily, my success is where I am and what I do. That's the indication of my success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy.
Thank you. So I would say success would be an increased engagement with our members and with our new graduates. And I think a reaching out to them in strategic ways would help to get us there. I think it's important that we provide opportunities to our young people. And in one way, on a very micro level, I would see success as if we have term limits for all positions on council, so that we are providing new opportunities for people to become engaged. I think that this should also be throughout the organization, that we have term limits at all levels of the organization, so that we increase the engagement with our members.
Thank you. This concludes the question portion of the meeting. Now each candidate will have 90 seconds for closing remarks. We'll start with Nancy.
Wait a sec. Whoops. Thank you, John. I would like to thank PEO for providing this forum, and to Changiz and Ray for the lively debate. Over the last 20 years, I have worked with PEO and other engineering stakeholders. Over this time, I've had the opportunity to work with a wide variety of people, and under my leadership, we have been able to make positive change in the complaints process, in the Engineering Act, and in identifying and celebrating role models. It is important to note that as a regulator, we exist to protect and serve the public interest. But as a self-regulator, we must also protect and serve the integrity and honor of the profession. I believe that to do this, we all have a role to play. If elected, my priorities are to strengthen the relevance of PEO, identify challenges to licensure for recent grads and foreign-trained engineers, create leadership opportunities for young professionals and EITs, strengthen financial accountability to the related to PEO operations, and support strategic outreach programs to the government and the community at large. I ask for your vote as your vice president, and I encourage everybody to vote in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Ray, your concluding remarks.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for that have watched this broadcast this evening and those that would be watching it in the future. Just a quick little story. It was back in 2011 I actually made the suggestion for these webcasts in relationship to an issue we had about who should be electing the president, whether it should be council or different things. I made the suggestion, but Kim Allen, the then CEO and registrar of PEO and now CEO of Engineers Canada, actually made it happen. I'll tell you, it's a whole different perspective when you're on this side of the table and all the setup that's here. So anyways, really would like to thank everybody involved with putting this on, and particularly for the members that are taking time out of your busy schedules to have yourself informed of who you should be voting for. And I encourage you to vote. One of the things I'd like to, I don't think it can go wrong. All three would represent you well as VP of the myself and Nancy and Changiz. I wouldn't have any problem if I don't win and either one of these individuals become vice president. One thing, though, I would like to try and get your vote. Some of the strengths I think I offer is the thinking outside the box, coming up with alternative suggestions for handling different situations. But I can also pay attention to the details. I'm told I'm a good organizer. I think I can do that aspect, and I've just been given the timeline to cut off. So thank you very much, and I would be very pleased if you'd vote for me. Thank you.
Changiz, your closing remarks.
Thank you, Nancy, Ray. Thank you, John. Thank you, PEO staff, and thank you for watching. I have been able to contribute to PEO and make positive and lasting changes by applying my values and vision: transparency, accountability, respect. These are the values that I have delivered to all chapters, predominantly to the East Central Region chapters, over my several years of volunteering with PEO and with Council for the past 4 years. Now I need your support to make more positive changes happen. Together, we can promote our profession and raise the value of engineering. Together, we can improve our governance and operations and involve the younger generation of engineers. Together, we can build strong relationships with our members and the public. And together, we can spread transparency, accountability, and respect in every change we make. Remember, together, we'll make a positive difference. Please visit my website at sadr.ca, sadr.ca, to learn more about my experience and goals. Again, my name is Changiz Sadr, and I am candidate for Vice President. Thank you for your vote.
Thank you. This concludes tonight's discussion. I would like to thank the candidates for their participation and thank also those watching online for their interest in the governance of the engineering profession. I hope you found the meeting to be informative and worthwhile. As a reminder, a recording of all meetings will be on PEO's website for the duration of the election. Thank you again to everyone participating in our discussion. And remember, your profession matters, so does your vote. Voting is quick and easy. You can vote on the internet or by phone. Voting opens on January 20th, and voting closes at 4 p.m. on February 24th. And all the information you need is on our website at peovote.ca. That's www.peovote.ca. Good night.